Can you guys hear me okay and see me okay and all that good stuff? Somebody could just put in the comments if everything's working all right. Hey, Brian, what's going on, man? All right, so I'm just going to assume that everything's working because... Oh, great. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate that. All right, well, hope everybody's doing great tonight. This is actually by request. Had a few comments, people asking about putting... about songwriting and song arranging, like putting the parts together and everything. So I thought we could go over that tonight. So there is a document that goes along with this, and there's a link in the description where you can download that. It will be really, really helpful if you have that document, because then you'll be able to follow along with what I'm talking about better. Michael Troy. Is that the Michael Troy that I know as Troy? Well, awesome. I'm glad you've tuned in. So yeah, if everybody wants to get that that document, it will, like I said, it'll help out considerably to be able to follow along with what we're going to be talking about here. I dropped my guitar pick, and apparently it's gone into, oh, there it is, just under my big butt. Hey, Russell, what's up? All right, so obviously, lots and lots and lots of people write songs that know absolutely nothing, and what I mean by that is they don't know anything about music theory and stuff like that. I had a bass student that he was in a band, and the guy that played guitar sang, and he wrote all the music, and he had like this big, huge loose leaf with like 2,000 songs that he had written, and they were all really, really good. I was like super jealous, I mean, they were incredible, and he didn't know anything. I mean, he couldn't tell you if, that's a D chord. I mean, he knew absolutely nothing. He did it completely by ear. So if you're one of those people that is gifted with an ear and just that natural raw talent just to crank out tunes and stuff, that's awesome. I am not one of those people. So not that I completely write from a music theory standpoint. We're going to kind of go over two different schools of thought on the subject. So if you've got your paper, you'll see that the first thing on there is the major scale. So if you want to know the major scale, because it is going to show you what notes are in a key, and it's also going to show you what chords are in a key too. So the example that I've got written is it's in the key of G major because it's starting on G. Yeah. But it's a movable shape, so no matter what key you're playing in, it's always going to be that same pattern. So if you wanted to know what the notes were in the key of A major, then you would just start the pattern on A. So there's 7 notes in a key. So in this key here over G major that we're looking at, we have G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and then it just starts over again. So the scale on here, it's only showing just the 7 notes that are in the key and then the octave. So it's starting on G, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and then it ends here on G again, and then it would just keep going up, like I said. So that'll give you what notes are in the key. So that's just kind of half of the battle. So if you know what notes are in the key, then you also, if you know what the notes are, then you could just play chords, figure out what all the notes in all the different chords that you know how to play, and then figure it out that way. Or we could do it the simple way that I'm going to show you. So the next thing down here, it says chord scales. So for each degree of the scale, and so what I mean by degree, each note, there is a chord that's associated with it. So the first scale degree, so we look on that chart down here, it's 2 columns. So on the left side, it's for major and minor chords. So this is just for 3-note chords. And then the column on the right side is for 7th chords, so for 4-note chords. And I know that there's a million other voicings of chords besides major, minor, and then the different variations of 7th chords, but that's what we're going to be covering in this because that's kind of your bread and butter. So the first note of the major scale, the chord that's associated with that is major. So in the key of G major, the 1 chord is G. The 2 chord is minor. So the second note is an A. So that means it would be A minor. The 3rd degree is a B, and it is also a minor. So we'd have B minor. The 4th degree is a major, which is a C. So we have C major. The 5th degree is a major, so we would have D major. The 6th degree is minor, so we had an E minor. And then that last note, F sharp, the chord that we have for that is a diminished chord. So for those of you that don't know what a diminished chord is, basically, if you take a minor chord and you flatten the 5, so a major chord consists of 1, 3, 5, the first, 3rd, and 5th note of the scale. And then if you flatten the 3rd, it's a minor chord. So that's like why you have your D major chord and D minor, because this note here, F sharp, is the 3rd, and we flatten it, make it minor. So a diminished chord is a minor chord, but the 5th is also flat. So it's not a very pretty sounding chord, but it is technically part of it because it consists, all of these chords will only contain the notes that are in the key. All right, so before we move on, does anybody have any questions about anything that we've gone over thus far? I know I'm not really going through this slow. These are subjects that we've kind of talked about one way or another, over the last while. So I didn't want to spend a whole bunch of time with it because I wanted to be able to have more time with the actual song creation process. So anybody have any questions so far? All right, so I will take that as a no, that nobody has any questions. Okay, so then going on to the right column for 7th chords, the first chord is a major 7, so we'd have G major 7. The 2 chord is a minor 7th chord, so we'd have A minor 7. The 3rd chord is a minor 7th, so we have B minor 7. The 4 chord is another major 7, so we have C major 7. The 5 chord is a dominant 7th chord, so we'd have D7. The 6th is a minor 7th, so E minor 7. And then the 7th degree is minor 7 flat 5. So what a minor 7 flat 5 is it's just a diminished chord, but it also has a flat 7 in it. And then back to G major again. Now, It isn't with this, it's not one or the other. You can mix and match this any way you want. So since major and minor chords work, and major seventh, minor seventh, and dominant seventh chords all work, you can mix and match this together. So what I mean by that is that if you wanted to have, like a G major chord, and then you wanted to have your 4 chord be a major seventh, and then your 5 chord to just be a major. The train left the station. Is that code for you're confused already? Yeah, so you can mix and match any of that stuff together. All right. So the next thing that we can do with this is that you could go with like a real basic garden variety type of chord progression that's like really, really common, like a 1-4-5 chord progression. So I'm sure you probably all heard that before. Even if you don't know what it is, I'm sure you've heard somebody say that 1-4-5 chord progression. So what that would be, if you look it on your chart, is it would be you would play the chord that's based off of the first note, the first degree of the major scale. And then you would have the chord that's based off the 4th degree and the chord that's based off of the 5th degree. So in this case, where we're playing in the key of G major, that would make our chords G major, C major, and D major. So, I mean, there's like a million songs that's, it's a really common chord progression. Our ears just really seem to dig it, but it doesn't need to be, you can do a lot with it. I mean, don't get me wrong. Don't get the impression that I think that it's not, a cool chord progression to use, because it is. It's like, it's used, I mean, so widely across all genres. So you don't necessarily have to like go into this with the idea of that, you're going to, that you need to use a specific chord progression that's already been done before. I mean, there are tried and true ones. If you look on the second page of this, I just have a thing it's just 3 common chord progressions. So I've got 1-4-5, I've got 1-6-2-5, and 4-5-1-7-6. So a 1-6-2-5 in this key would be G, because that's our 1 chord, E minor, because that's our 6th chord, A minor, because that's our 2 chord, and then D major, because that's our 5 chord. And that's a really common, you've heard like that, So that's another really good chord progression that's like pretty, it's just pretty common, pretty straightforward, used, all the time. 4-5-1-7-6. So we could, in this case, we could start with D, E minor, G, and then that diminished chord, and then back to the E minor. So I mean, there's like lots and lots of different things that you can do with this. So a good way to really start with it is just kind of play around with those chord progressions, because as you do it, you'll hear stuff that you've heard before. You may not go, oh, this is that song or that song, but you'll recognize that, oh, okay, I've heard this before. This is something that I've heard in another song. Now, the same thing with those, you could like, mix and match between the majors and minors and all the different types of 7th chords. So with songwriting, where this is more how I lean to do it, is that I don't think so much of the chord progression as I just have in front of me like, okay, well, these are the chords that I can use that are in this key. But it doesn't mean that you're limited to those. You're only limited to what you want to put in there. If you want to have it so there's a key change, if you want to have it to where there's just one part, maybe there's just a single note that's just a half step outside of the scale. As long as you think it sounds good, I'm a big believer in there. In the whole philosophy, if it sounds good, play it. So if you like the way something sounds, don't put too much into all this other stuff. Don't think of these things as rules. Think of them as guidelines. This is to help you if you get stuck, more or less. And you can play it safe this way. Anything you do in here, no matter what, it's going to sound good. It's going to be in key. So a good way to kind of really start with it is just to start with a chord that you like the sound of. So what's everybody's favorite chord? What's your go-to chord if you like pick up a guitar and like you pick it up and you strum a chord to like kind of see if it sounds, if it's in tune or whatever. What's your go-to chord, or what's the chord that you just really like the way that it sounds, that you just find yourself playing all the time? So this is the part where I want some participation. Everybody type something in there. Give me your favorite chord. Nobody's got a favorite chord? D major. Thank you. All right, so if we could start this with D major. So there's two things that we have to look at with this. Now we know that D major is a chord that is in this key. It's our 5 chord. G, A, B, C, D. And if you look on your chart, the 5 chord is a major. So we could use D major and still be in the key of G major. Or we could make that our 1 chord and then build all of our chords from there. So, we have D is our major, our second is E minor, F sharp minor, G major, A major, B minor, so on and so forth. But just to kind of simplify things, let's just kind of stick around with the key of G major. And the thing that's nice about using the key of G major is that all of the strings, any one of the strings can be played open in this key. That's why there's lots and lots of guitar music that's in the key of G major and C major, because you can use those strings played open to be able to add to your song. All right, so if we're starting with this D chord, now we know, or you probably already know, but if not, we'll just kind of run over it real quick, is that you can do like things like suspended chords. So you could do like D suspended 2 by lifting off your 2nd finger, and D suspended 4 by putting your pinky down onto the 3rd fret of the high E. So any of those variations right there are still in key. You could still play D suspended 2, and it's still in key, and it's still going to work. It'll still work with what we're doing here. So that's one variation you can do with that. Another variation you can do with it is stuff like a slash chord. So like D slash F sharp or D over F sharp. So what that is that when you have a slash chord, is that the first letter is telling you what chord you're doing, and then the letter after the slash is telling what your bass note is. So the 3 notes that make up a D major chord are D, A, and F sharp. So we can play the A string open with it. We can also use our thumb here to pick up the 2nd fret of the low E, which is an F sharp. So that would be D over F sharp. So by doing that, you can take this one chord and you can get some more mileage out of it. So you might be like, there, I go to the G chord. Now, the reason why I did that is that the F sharp is the seventh tone. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp. So the F, whenever you're playing the 7, it's always pushing you to go back to the tonic, to the key. So in this case, G. So we could just leave it at that. So that could be like a verse right there. We got D over F sharp, G. Now, from there, if you wanted to go to a have that go from there to another chord, then you could just go through and try the different chords that are in the key until you find one that the way that you like the way that it sounds. And I go to that A minor, that sounds kind of weird. I go to that A major and it sounds good, but check this out. Now we're no longer in the key of G major because that A major has a C sharp in it. So now we've, instead of just having one sharp of F sharp, we have two sharps, F sharp and C sharp. So we have gone to the next. If you're familiar with the circle of fifths, we've just gone to the next degree. So we've actually, in that case, by adding that A major in there, we've changed the key. We've made it D major. Now, when you're in the process of working with writing the song, don't put too much worry and thought into that. Like here, we start off, we're like, oh, okay, we're playing in the key of G major, and then we throw that chord in there, and suddenly we've changed keys. It doesn't matter because it doesn't. It's not really changing the whole flow of the tune or anything. Especially if you're just writing music, like for yourself, like as a solo artist or something. You just got your acoustic guitar and you've got like all these lyrics you've written. You're just trying to put it to music. This is just a really simple way to do it. But we want to stay in G major. So that we could call that, like, we could have that be the verse, or it could be a chorus. It could really be any part, because, when we kind of put this together, you want to have like, a verse, a chorus, and then possibly like a bridge. To me, this kind of sounds more like a chorus to me. But again, it's all kind of subject to opinion, just to what you think sounds good. So we've used D, which is our 5 chord. We've used D over F sharp, which is still our 5 chord, but it's kind of paying a homage to our 7 chord because it's based off of F sharp, to G, which is our 1 chord. So now we got to try it. Now we've got this part, and we haven't decided yet. Is this the major, or excuse me, is this the verse? Is it the chorus? What is it? So what we can do now is we can try to come up with another part, and we can go to our pool of chords here that we can use to do this. So let's see. We've got E minor, C, D. So that's a pretty simple. Having it go to that D kind of makes it is a way that you could take that part and hook it to the part that we already went over. Now, you don't have to necessarily just use B minor, E minor. B minor, I really dig that chord too. You don't necessarily just have to use these open chords like this too. So if you were trying to do something that was maybe like a more of kind of like a hard rock kind of a thing, you could rather than using all of those, full voiced chords, you could just use power chords, but you would still use them, be rooted off the same thing. So before we had that D, the F sharp, and the G. So now we could have like a D5. And we could go to the, from F sharp to G. But the only thing with this, now here we are again with that C sharp in there. So what I've done here is I'm taking a G sharp, or excuse me, a G power chord. So it's G and then D, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just a fifth power chord. And I'm flattening the G down to an F sharp. So again, that is pushing us back up to that G. So a completely different kind of a thing that is now, it's still the same chords that we were, the same chord ideas, but now we're using these power chords instead. Now, so that being said, when back to the chord scale, you can just do a power chord based off of the degree of all of those. So you would have G, A, B, C, D, E, and then we go to F sharp, it would need to be diminished. We have to flatten that 5 back to G again. You can mix and match these things together too. So you could have like, one guitar, going. And simultaneously another guitar behind it going. Just to kind of give it that more kind of a hard rock type thing. Now, the other thing that's cool about using power chords is since it's neither a major or a minor chord, it's just 1 and 5. It's kind of just putting the backbone, the foundation. That leaves you open to doing things with, like when you're soloing, you're using like playing arpeggios. So even though the power chord is just 1 and 5, on that 6 chord, that E, you could do, you could do like an E minor arpeggio over the top of that, and it's going to sound really good. All right, so let's shift gears a little bit. Someone mentioned B minor. So B minor, again, is in the key that we're in. Now, what I really like about using this chord, and like I said, we've got all these open strings, is that now we can play this, and we can just change the root note. So we could go from that B, A, G, E. So that's like a pretty pretty common thing too. There's a bunch of different songs that actually have that. Judas Priest, Beyond the Realms of Death. Or lots and lots of songs that actually use that particular chord progression. But you could take that idea and you could do it in other places. You could bring it up here and do your E minor, and you could do a similar type thing. So a lot of times what I'll do is especially if I just play like one chord and for some reason it just hits me that I like the way that it sounds, or it just kind of sparks something, I will kind of stay on that chord and then just pick other notes that I can play that are within reach and just kind of go off of the sound, what you think sounds good. Now, the other thing with the power chords with doing this is if you've got a chord progression, so let's say we'll just go back to, we've got that D over F sharp, G, and then we had the B minor over A, back to the G again. So that's all usable stuff that we've been doing. So use the power chords and then take advantage of the fact that these open strings work with this. So I've got this. You can take any of those open strings. Now, that doesn't necessarily sound very good to do that, but that sounds really good. So if we take the E, we've got E5, we can play all of the rest of the strings open because they are all in that key. So what I've done there, we've got that E and then C. So C here on the 8th fret of the low E string, and I just use my middle finger. So all I've done is I've just added that as my bass note, but I can still play all the rest of these open strings. So that right there, that's a pretty good, the E. So this would be, again, if we're looking at it in this key, this would be our 6th chord because it's E minor. But actually, before, one other thing that I want to talk about. So, and I've talked about this before, but every major key has a relative minor key, and every minor key has a relative major key. So what that means is that, like in the case here, we're in the key of G major. You can find out what your relative minor key is by, it's the 6th degree of the scale. So in this G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, E. Or you can do it by just going down a step and a half. So we're at G, you go down a step, half E. So the key of E minor and the key of G major are relative to each other, meaning that they share the same notes. So the notes that are in the key of E minor are the same notes that are in the key of G major. It's just that the scale would start on E, and it's a different scale. So some people, when they're doing stuff with a minor key, they'll actually use the natural minor scale and then build the chord scale off of that. For me, I've just found it a lot easier is that if I just simplify it and keep everything always based off of the major scale. So even though this has more of like a minor vibe to it, it doesn't have to be, or even though it's got a minor vibe to it, I'm still going to use the major. I'm going to build the progression and refer to stuff with the progression based off of the major scale. So with this particular thing, our first chord would be our 6th chord. So it'd be like 6, and then C is our 4 chord. And then down to G is our 1 chord, D over F sharp. Now, with that, you could also just like strum it. However you want, if you know, like a power chord thing, like just however you want to do it. What I will generally do is when I'm putting something together, unless I just happen to like get it where the first time where I think, okay, this is it, this sounds really good, which just doesn't usually work out that way. Then what I'll do is I'll come back, I'll put it together, and then I will just experiment with different chord voicings and all this different stuff like I was just doing until I find what it is that I like the sound of. Because like I said, it isn't really a right or a wrong way to do it. It's just a matter of if you think something sounds good. If you like the way it sounds, play it. What's bullshit, Vincent? All right, so does anybody have any questions over any of the stuff that we've talked about? Does anybody have like something that they've been working on, or they're trying to put a song together? And you know, I like to try to help if I can. So ask away. Nobody? All right, so one other thing that I wanted to show you that like what I'll use for stuff with writing is not just these like power chord shapes like this, but the different dyad shapes that I've done a ton of different stuff on. You know, but you got your major third and your minor third, and then your fourths and your fifths and all that stuff. Let's see, I haven't written anything in a long time, and I was using this as an idea maker to try and get back into writing. Oh, great! Well, thanks, Brian. I hope that it helps. As usual, before I come on, I try to get everything put together and and then as soon as I get on, it's like I get the camera turns on, and then all of a sudden I stage fright or whatever, and then I just forget half of what it was I was going to talk about. Oh, thank you, 62 maybes Junior. Sorry, can't see that. I'm going blind. So yeah, I need to get a new chord, apparently. I will take those different dyad shapes, and I'll just move them around until I like the way something sounds. So I can just take this shape right here. So what I've got, this is A minor, because this is an A, and then this is the dyad shape for the, it's the minor third. Now, the key of A minor, it's relative major. We do just the opposite. We'd go up a step and a half. So A, up a step is to B, half step here to C. So that means that C major is the relative to that. So by taking this, I know that I can play all of these open strings because they're all in the key. The key of C major, or the key of A minor, has no sharps or flats. So I can play anything with that. I could play the open low E string, any of those strings. So that leaves me to be able to do stuff. Now right there, I just introduced a note that's out of key, and it gives us that little diminished thing right there. But that kind of sounds good, I think. Or we can just take this shape and move it around. Just because I like the way it sounds. So the combination of going between the minor dyad shape and the major dyad shape. So that one too is just like a full, if you were now you could go through and figure out what every one of those chords, here I've got A minor, and I also have a B in there. So an A minor chord has an A and an E and a C. Now we've got this B in there. So it's still in that key, and you could go through and figure out what the fancy names like that, but it's just unnecessary for the most part. Just any of that stuff like that. And I wouldn't know where to begin. Well, that's where you begin right there. It's just like what we did. You begin with one chord or just one sound, anything, even if it's, if you just go through and find just anything. Okay, well, that sounds okay. Just by moving this to something that's nearby. Now there I went, I'm like, it's a B note, and then I went to did like a C shape. I could do the C shape with the power chord shape instead. Anything like that. It's I think a lot of people, they put all of this focus onto that they have to know all of this different stuff, all this different music theory stuff, and they're so focused and worried about key being in, staying in the same key. There's lots and lots of cool stuff that changes keys all the time. The only time where that really runs into a problem is just like if you're playing it, with a group and someone's trying to play a solo over the top of it and you're changing keys constantly, then that becomes a little bit more difficult. It becomes jazz. So anybody have any questions or anything about any of this stuff? And it doesn't even, and it doesn't have to necessarily just be about songwriting, just guitar questions in general, just like, like what we usually do. Wow, anybody that's typing up questions or whatever, I'm going to show you a song that I wrote that I did completely based off of this whole thing of sounds. So I wrote this a long time ago, like in like 1990 probably. And, I had learned, like triads. So what I had done is I just took this shape for a minor triad. So this would be like an F sharp minor. And I hear when I strum all the strings that it sounds good. I didn't worry about, okay, well, now do I have notes that are out of key or whatever? I was just like, well, this sounds really good. So I was like, then all I did is I went, I wonder how this would sound. And I just reversed my second and fourth finger. So like right now, my fourth finger's on the ninth fret of the A string, second finger's on the seventh fret of the D string, and first finger's on the sixth fret of the G string. I just reversed these two fingers. So now I've moved my bass note from F sharp down to E, and that sounds good. So, then I moved the bass line down again to D, and I did D suspended 2. I like the way that sound. And then to D flat, and it's D flat minor 7. So the whole chord progression. So that was like the verse, and then when I went to the chorus, I went back up to the F sharp, but it's a different chord voicing. So now I've got F sharp minor 7 to E suspended 2. Back down to D suspended 2, and then the D flat minor 7, and then just the whole progression just starts over again. So that was completely done. I've never went through and figured out what those exact chord voicings are or anything like that. I just did it purely off of sound and just moved in the direction that I felt like, like the little voice in my head was telling me to go or whatever. Your opinion on Sigma guitar? I am not sure what that is. Sigma, is it a brand? Yeah, I'm not sure what that is. All right, so does anybody else have any questions? And you want to clarify what you meant there? Then I can answer that, because I'm not sure what Sigma is, unless, like I said, unless it's like a brand or something. And if it is a brand, oh, so it is a brand. Chinese guitar company, released by Martin. Huh. I don't really have an opinion, because that's the first I've ever heard of that. At least the first that I can remember. I mean, hell, I could have played one for all I remember, but yeah, I don't know. Could be good. There's a lot. I mean, if Martin was behind it, it was probably a good instrument. There's lots of guitars you can get that are made overseas that, used to kind of be the whole stick on that was that all the guitars made, in Japan, or, overseas somewhere or something, that it's no good, which is just, it's not true. Right now, there's a lot of the foreign made guitars that play better than the US made ones, and they're a lot cheaper. This is just what I was told, because I don't have personal experience with this, but our bass player, he's a huge Geddy Lee fan, and he bought a Geddy Lee signature Fender bass, and he bought the USA model, which was, it was, over $1,000 anyway. And then they put out some cheaper versions of them that were made in Japan or Mexico, or I'm not sure where. And anyhow, we we stopped at the Fender booth at NAMM, and he played the Mexican one or Japanese or whatever it was, and it was way cheaper. And he said that he said it played way better than the USA made one. So like I said, that was just his opinion. I played some USA Custom Shop Jackson guitars that are just totally awesome, and I've also played some Japanese ones. I have some that are, I'd put them right up against them, and they're a fraction of the cost. Yeah, I read that apparently that Martin, I don't know if they owned it, but they were selling them, but it says that they discontinued selling them and being a part of that in 2007. At least the little thing that I just pulled up and read. Yeah, but anyway, we're about out of time. But I hope that helps some of you with stuff with songwriting. I drink and I know things. Yeah, I drink and I don't know things. I hope that this helped you out with songwriting. If you're just trying to get into it, or you've dabbled in a little bit and kind of stuck or whatever, yeah, that's just kind of my method of doing it. So I'll come up with a couple of different things and then just kind of put them together. And if you come up with two different things that you like, you're got riff idea 1 and riff idea 2, and you put them together that way, play 1 first and then 2, and it doesn't quite sound right, just switch it, play 2 first and then 1. And a lot of times that'll fix it. Sometimes you need to come up with a third part, like a bridge, to kind of hook the 2 parts together. But yeah, so that's just kind of my take and my method for songwriting. All right, well, I'd like to thank everybody that came out tonight. I really appreciate it. If you like the content, the stuff that that I'm doing here, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, hit that thumbs up button. All that stuff really helps them to know that I'm doing a good job, and that they that I can keep doing this. So if nobody has any questions or anything, then I will catch you guys tomorrow. So the plan is, that was what I was going to talk about. So the plan is for this thing, I'm going to be coming on Tuesdays and Wednesdays at 7. And then, as it is right now, because of my private lesson teaching schedule, Thursday at that time isn't going to work. So on Thursdays, we're going to be an hour later. So 7 on Monday, 7 on Tuesday, 7 on Tuesday, 7 on Wednesday, and 8 o'clock on Thursday. And those will be the 3 days for right now that we're going to be doing this, and we'll just kind of see how it goes from there. Oh, you're welcome, Rick. Thank you. I appreciate it. Oh, and you're always welcome, Rusty. I always, you're always here, no matter what, it seems like. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming out. I really do appreciate it. And if you have ideas for things that you'd like to see, covered, whether it be a lesson or, like we did like some basic maintenance, and we did a little bit of show and tell with with my guitars. Going to do that again, but show like my whole like amplifier stuff, my whole live rig setup and all that. So yeah, if you have any ideas for things, just leave them in the comments, and I will catch you guys tomorrow. Thanks again for coming out. Have a great night, everybody.